Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Permission Statement. As again, I want to thank you if you've been coming here, just passing through, or you're a subscriber. Um, Many of you very well may be people that have been part of this journey or part of this narrative in one way or another. So I want to give a quick one, leaping off of what I was talking about yesterday. I got to get on the road, got to get to work. Um, so, told y'all about what happened to Angelica, um, how that kind of came about, what happened. Well, what happened to my father-in-law, that happened before that. Um, I met Tony and Lo, go to Amsterdam, come back, go to Texas, learn something. I want to share that with y'all in a little bit. That's where an important part of my permission statement and where I actually learned about cognitive intervention was there in Texas. The murder of my first wife's father happens while I'm in Texas. Then I come home from Texas by way of Amsterdam to find out that, there was my friend that was murdered while I was in Amsterdam that I was flying back for. There's a lot of speculation, very how you say, very well formed premises to support the speculation. It wasn't just an untangible accusation or anything. So there was a lot of decisions he made. Imagine the hardship. You got two people you care about the greatest, and to be in the middle of this awkward dilemma, and you're just trying to, like I said, I retired from any groups of anything, graffiti crew, and I'll explain how and why. It wasn't a bad thing. It was nothing like, hey, I had done enough, and I figured I had earned that, so that this change that I wanted to make and to go help other people try to facilitate that change. This was back in 2004, so going on 20 years ago. And the thing that I read, I think, was in 2003. And I want to share that with you and see if you guys get the same feeling that I did when I just read this. It was an article written by an anonymous person, and it changed my life way back then. Like, it was that compelling that everything changed from that moment moving forward. So I came home and I was like, hey, I'm good, love everybody, yada, 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 and just worked my ass off, worked in construction, and then my friend put me into that other position. I was still hanging out with friends from the past because I cared about them a lot, and that's why I say we have to be very careful about who we maintain these connections with, and unless they're done with everything, it may be a better choice to just kind of let them get to that point before, if we're already like making move, if we can help them, fine. But if they're not ready yet, you gotta let that shit go, because it's like somebody drowning. They will drown you too, and you'll drown. So they train you to push, like in the conservation corps, we do that thing, the class and everything, and they teach you if you're saving somebody, if you gotta let them drown and then save them or resuscitate them, and that's what need to be done. And they teach you all these moves, how to push them off you, because so many people have drowned trying to save other people that are drowning, and they drown both of them. So in that sense, I think that's the same way with toxic people, whether you're friends or family or whatever. If they ain't ready yet, they can bring you down too. Even if you've gone way up here, they can facilitate a relapse, whatever. I mean, let's face it, there's all kinds of things that they can do to bring you down. And they're, I love you, and all this other shit, and I love you too. And then before you know it, you're making moves in the wrong direction. Like somebody that's underwater, that they think they're swimming to the top, but they're actually swimming down. They drown as a result. All right. So I'm working my ass off, maintaining the friendships. I'm staying over there at Alexander Cozy's and with the icons of people next door, which are the children of all these CFOs, CIOs that grew up in Indonesia and yada, yada. And Cozy got me this job. Momentum's gaining, right? But I go out with my friends, take them to the secretaries' work, club decos or whatever, and then one of them goes and starts a fight that didn't need to happen, and that fight would later lead to his demise. Not the cause of it, but the results, the events that occurred after that changed his path. In a sense, where it put him somewhere where his life was eventually taken, and his brother was there that night as well. They were both taken into custody, and then as a result of that happening that night eventually led to one being killed in Mexico, The other was taken into custody and all that stuff. That those guys immediately went looking for him and his people, and they knew where he was. They were looking for his family, unfortunately, and their path to that was my friends, just because they knew him, and they held Angelica hostage in a car and everything, and then mom came out with the pistol when they go and kick in the door and all that, and then that dude gets killed, and more stuff starts happening, and I make a decision to stop sitting on the sideline and get proactive and say, hey, enough is enough. And I was told, like, are you sure you want to get involved? Is this a decision you want to make? And, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have, I'd probably say more than likely I shouldn't have. But this is as crazy as it sounds. Sometimes if we remove those negative choices, those positive outcomes would never have occurred. So you don't know if everything that you hold dear would still be if you removed even those negative choices. And I say that in a sense because Lucky's still friends with this cat, even after all that and the stuff that happened before that, to include some dude jumping out of Drax from Clover, jumping out of a closet with a knife and spitting on him, making him cry, robbing him for his chain in front of a room full of people. That happened before this. So I was kind of surprised that their friendship was even able to rebuild after that. And then after everything else that happened as a result, and even more happened at that house right there. And I went and did something. Like I said, I'm an infantryman, Overwatch, but I'm also over the top in some sense. If I love you and I respect you, I'll go to the wall for you. And I did some wild and crazy stuff against people who were seeking to do harm against her and him. I had heart for Angelica. She had been through enough. Kid was struggling with addiction and trying to get through it. I had heart for this other dude. He was in the conservation corps with me. I brought them up to Napa years ago, him and a bunch of my buddies, to try to help facilitate a change. It worked for many of them. Some of them it didn't. It was a platform, because the California Conservation Corps can do that. It can give you it can open up other opportunities that may not be there before that. So he and I had went through all that together, and we had a long-standing history. And so again, I was put in a position: do I take up for one friend against another who's also this same individual was involved in this incident and in this incident, and it was just like a choice had to be made to where I stand. And it was hard to make that choice. No matter what, when I came home and all this stuff came at me, I was like, what the fuck? Like what do I do here? And it was crazy. And that's why, like I said, so much of what I'm doing here, my focus is on my family, my wife and my sons at the time, and just us. It's like, hey, help who we can, but my focus is them. And so reason being, because I've made that mistake of putting so much love and energy into people and trying to help fix their problems, then they get themselves another problem, and more than likely they were the reason why they were in that problem to begin with. They made a decision that put them in that circumstance, right? And you gotta let those people kind of just suffer the consequences, so that they learn from that lesson. Because if we're constantly fixing people's problems, they never truly endure the suffrage that may facilitate the change. And so after all that happened, they're all still friends now. Ironic. It's can't figure it out. Cool, whatever. I'm good. My focus is elsewhere. But it had resonating consequence. Like you throw a damn rock into a pond, the ripple effect that still carry on to this day, and I take shit seriously. I don't make light of nothing, depending on the caliber of the person. But complacency is another thinking error, because your mind or your body or your brain or your ego will tell you, and so some people will call that hypervigilance, when in some cases, under the right circumstance, it ain't hypervigilance at all. It's just being vigilant. There's nothing wrong with vigilance. I understand hypervigilance can be like a form of mental slavery, because a lot of the guys that I'm going to interview here and bring in, once I get to the interview part, you can hear it from them. They're with their families, but they're not with their families. They're there in that moment, but they're like looking at the door. They're like processing, okay, is this person a threat right here? If they did this, I would do this, yada, yada. If this happens, they're constantly in a state of readiness, I would call it, at the ready, right? So, certain resonating consequences as a result of all that chaos. I take it seriously. I don't underestimate, but unfortunately, it's difficult when you're dealing with people that are complacent to get them to understand vigilance, right? Um, Keep in mind, every last one of them are dead right now because of complacency. They got way too comfortable, whether it's Murphy Serrano, Mariana Bravo. I don't know if Roy was, but me knowing Roy was kind of just like, get it how you live. He was, you know, but I mean, if somebody's got your number and they're really willing, you're never going to be on guard 100% of the time. So they're really going to get at you, especially in Mexico. It's just like it's much more simplified than here in America. But Lucky, at the time when all this was happening, was waiting for his cousin to come home, and we'll call him Dusty. Dusty's brother was Dent. Uh, his name was Dennis, but we'll call him Dent. Awesome. These are the cousins of Tim. Lucky, and good dudes, good people, good family. And eventually he would come home. I think if he was around when all this was happening, he would have been able to. I don't think this would have happened because dude had some clout. That was his neighborhood. Cypress Street, that was his. Cypress Avenue, I think it was in his borough, I would say. And I don't think any of that stuff would have went down. It would have been immediately spot checked, right? But he wasn't home yet. But when he did come home, he found himself back home with his family. And like I said, there's these boroughs that kiss up against each other, and once you cross over into another one, it's like, here, and then bam, that's somebody else's terrain or whatever. And I think he lived in another terrain, pretty sure. And there was, I guess, a conflict one night. I don't know the entire details, but there was a youngster, and I say youngster, not like a little kid, but like a young adult maybe. And there was some kind of argument. I don't know what it was about or what it was for, but Dusty, who's a known, respected, reputable person, his life was taken by this individual in his driveway at his home. He was shot and killed there. And that again had resonating consequences, right? What I'm told is that they caught up with that youngster because it's like, dude killed the wrong person. I mean, not wrong like he didn't know who he was. Like that was the intent of what his actions were, but maybe he didn't know that who he was taking out was a somebody. And I'm not saying on a maid level or whatever. I don't know that information. I don't think that's what it is. But whatever he was loved, respected, revered, feared, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's just like, dude was a known, reputable person. And that youngster took out the wrong person in the sense that ain't nobody just going to be like, and chalk it up like, man, well, shit happens. No, there's going to be consequences. And that's what eventually ended up happening from what I'm told. They set it up. Now, I don't know who they is. I don't know these people. I'm just giving y'all the meat and the potatoes of the story. But it was a setup that there was girls that they boxed them in with cars or something like that. And they killed that dude who killed Dusty. But that's not going to bring him back, man, because this dude was like a centerpiece of his family. His brother, I know his brother really well. Good dude, man. And it just broke my heart to hear that it's like they waited all these years for him to come home and for this to happen. It's just like, it's just that it has to hurt the family because it probably didn't have to happen. And although it has been rectified in a way, or that's not going to bring the individual back. You always, of course, want the individual. You don't want the revenge. You want the revenge will be like, okay, eye for an eye, but you always will want the person. I couldn't stay. I was just saturated with hate and anger and the desire for revenge when my brother died in Afghanistan, and it controls you. And yeah, that'd be great for me to know if I could that those people who took my brother's life are dead, and maybe hopefully they died in a horrible way. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not cool. I don't. He meant something to me. Um, but I much would rather than to have that feeling of satisfaction or gratification. I'd rather have my brother here. I'd rather him being with his 6 children that we know of now. 6. He has 6. Just had a grandbaby. 5 deployments. 6 children that don't have their father, and so definitely you want the person back and not the revenge. But I won't. Not that I wouldn't be content to some extent to find out that the people that murdered Mariana are now dead and maybe caught themselves in a similar demise on the way out for what they did to that young lady. Um, you know, Maybe I don't know if I'll hear about that. I don't know if it'll ever even happen because Mexico, man, is a trip. We go down there and it's kind of just like, you know, yeah. But that's been the argument here. So here in Napa, I'm just a father. I talked to y'all. I brought up that investigation. I'm going to show you guys the email. It's with the county supervisors. I've requested an investigation into the conduct of the supervisor of the respondent in this matter and the director because there's protocol that they violated. It shouldn't matter if you're married to a social worker or a police officer, firefighter, anybody that's interwoven into a county that has friends, that you as a parent should not be able to exercise your 14th Amendment right to be concerned about your child, especially considering the history. They didn't know the history, but then when I got to a desperate situation and I brought it to them confidentially, like we're there didn't have to be no consequence, no punishment. That wasn't the intent. I read it to y'all. I was asking for help. EAP, can we do some AME? Can y'all sit down with this individual and be like, hey, young lady, sounds like you got some stuff in the past that you're lucky to be here. Why don't you get it dialed in, get it together? But no, instead they did what they did to protect their own image. And I'm going to get into that about Christine Briseño, the Director of Health and Human Services, or no, Human Resources for the County of Napa, because she was the first person I spoke to who gave me this number and the people that I spoke to, and they told me that if I didn't, I was complicit, yada, yada, where it got to. And then when it got back to me going to the senator and to the county supervisors, when the senator sent me to the county supervisors and Jimena Esposa, when I sat down with her, the phone call that I received from Christine Briseño was a whole different attitude. And what she told me let me know that the supervisor, Alexis Vossmeyer, and the director were lying. I'm going to read y'all some emails. We're going to go through it. So I want at every single level to make sure the next people are making sure the people below. And if you stay within the county level, I'm just telling you, man, that's what I'm saying. All these enablers and everything, I do not feel confident. When I go to legal aid, they help me out, but they're part of family court services. And I have seen the connection between child welfare services and family court services and Napa Empower Women's Services and all this. Everywhere I go, I'm greeted by a face that's not only a drinking buddy or friend of the individual. A lot of them didn't know. Fair enough. But that doesn't mean that they should use their influence to try to negate the safety or the future of my son. With everything that I'm telling you guys that we've been through, I'm desperate. I don't want my son to go through any of that stuff, man. I don't want my son to suffer addiction. I have cousins that are going through it, family members, friends. I saw my mother, my foster mother, die in the bed. The respondent was with me when that happened. We drove to San Diego to bury her friend who died as a result, and I was just dumbfounded because she was like, "Yeah, I told her to slow it down." I'm looking at her like, is that the pot calling the kettle black right here, young lady? I'm not saying she's an everyday drinker, but when she does, she hits it hard. And when she gets around these friends that she chooses, whether they're from the past or from the present, it just, I mean, that's the way it's going to be. If you have a problem and you go around people that are problem-like minded to your problems and they get into a thing, it's gonna pull you out. That's why they say don't go to your stomping grounds and everything. Maybe do a walkthrough or go back to help out, but you shouldn't go back there and just hang out tough and everything with the same people that are still doing the same shit, because it's likely it's you know the mind and addiction and everything. It's a powerful thing, and it'll draw you back. So that's another individual that's life was taken, but there's still more to tell y'all about life experience. Just this is just one, how you say, network of people, and I'm not saying they weren't all like. It's hard to explain the dynamic in San Diego. There's so many people from different groups and cities and families are somehow interwoven because everybody goes to the same place. They hang out. They grow up together, even if they grow up on different sides. TJ, Highland, all these places, downtown, the Gas Lamp, Pacific Beach, Ocean Beach. It makes these connections that are built. It's a trip. It's hard to explain if you ain't from there, but those that are here, some of y'all know what I'm talking about, and the people that came from other places understand I would say exclusive dynamic of San Diego, because I've lived many places and there's just nothing like it in that aspect. So I got to get to work. I got a few more stories to give y'all, and then I'm gonna really dip hard into all this stuff that's going on here in Napa. I'm just a father. I mean, I know nobody's gonna believe this by the things that I say, but I love my spouse, man. I loved her so much, and it's like I didn't want to see her die. I didn't want to see her crash into a tree, or be laying dying in a bed because of all this. So all these people that were just like encouraging the behavior, like I said, those are my enemies. They were my enemies. They're my enemies now. And the hurt that now resonates with my son because of all this, it makes it just that much more personal. But I'm here by nonviolent means. This is part of therapy right here, to be able to get it out there, to be able to like vent. And it's just like, if they want to lie, I've said it since the beginning. I said it in writing. I have the email. Every time they lie, I'll come here with the truth. And even if the truth is not favorable for me, I'll let it all out because it's important. And I understand who I'm dealing with and the potential consequences. And so it's important that if their negligence or their complacency or their, when you always hear the whole thing, then you'd be like, oh shit, yeah, that's questionable, right? They'll try to chalk it up to like, oh no. But watch, when I start putting the pieces together for you, then y'all will see a little bit more of what I'm talking about. But say I'm confronted on the street or whatever, and I got to get them up or do whatever, and somebody gets hurt. It's important that I express the narrative here before, because that doesn't mean that I say somebody comes and approaches me on the street, because I'm being honest about all this stuff, right? And then something happens, and somebody gets hurt. Then I'm put into a circumstance where I'm having to represent or defend myself in a courtroom for this stuff that could have been prevented. And it's all a result of this in the same county that weaves the same power in all this circumstance. And you're bringing to the surface certain truths that they don't want people to know, So I'm probably going to be pissing people off. And then so you have the official capacity, county supervisors, HR, child welfare services, all these people. And then you got the rah-rah people, right? The rah-rah people, you can't negotiate with them, man. You have to understand what their intentions are going to be. And there's always the potential outcome of violence. So you have to prepare for that mentally. But it's just like, that's not a good outcome either. But should that ever be the case, it's important that everybody knows here how it got to that point. If I'm put in a circumstance where it's like I gotta defend myself out in public and somebody gets hurt, could be me, more likely be me, whatever. I ain't tripping, but it's like it's like I don't want to be in a situation where I'm out here, they're pissed off because they made their decisions to justify their behavior and put my son at risk. And these people are now angry and they want to come and do whatever they got to do, and I got to do what I got to do. And then I'm put in a situation unbalanced again, where the deck is stacked against me because of what I'm doing here now by being honest and telling the truth and requesting these investigations into these public officials and yada yada. And I'm gonna be the people that want to come and lie. Hey, you guys wanted to bring, you guys wanted to be in here. Where we're at now, we're at the truth. If I'm lying, refute me. Or if you're gonna send your people or whatever, handle your business. But I'm here to protect my son. And hear that? That's a permission statement. I don't want to be in that bullshit, but that's the permission state that the mind says, I have to protect my son, so these other things. I shouldn't fucking have to. With everything that I'm showing you guys, this should have been never even happened. I shouldn't have had to argue or explain with somebody that's done all this stuff and has had this history, knows the shit that I've been through, that it's like, it should be cut and dry, man. We can't hand down that lifestyle to our child. All this stuff that I'm sharing with you guys here, people, I drive for millionaires. I go all over the place. People have no idea what I've been through. They have absolutely no idea. They'd be in shock to hear this shit. You know why? Because that's not the vibe that I put out. I don't, yeah, man, like I was tough and I did all this stuff and whoop-de-whoop. And that's not me. They know there's something about this guy, He don't fuck around, but he's cool as a fan. But they know all I care about is my family, my wife, my son, what's good for us. That's all I talk about. That's all I live. So that's what I put out. That's what I'm proud of. I'm not proud of all the stuff that I did in the past and all the crazy stuff. It happened. It helped, help make me who I am, but it helped the chaos in my life that I wish I could undo sometimes, but I can't. Can't go back in time, but you can live for the moment now and moving forward. But people don't know this about me because I don't glorify that stupid fucking shit. So they would be shocked. Anyone that comes here along the way that knows who I am, they'd be utterly shocked. They're like, I can't believe John's been through all that stuff. Wow. Because that's not what I make life about. All they know is I love my son and that everything I do for him. And that's what it is. And that's where we should get to. Too many people hang on to that. They just, they don't want to let go. It's a psychological obstacle for them to be able to let go of who they once were, maybe, or the pride and the ego and the status and all that stuff. Let that shit go. Let your family and your kids and their future and them going to college, man, and finding happiness. That's got to be what it's about right there, man. It has to be.